In November 1945, Britain's war with Germany was over. The Allied forces put the Nazi Party on trial for war crimes. Hitler was dead, the Third Reich was finished, and Hermann Göring was the new Führer. Here was a man who seemed to have committed so many military mistakes during his career, it was amazing he could hold his head high as a leader. However, some of the British troops were grateful for these mistakes because it meant they were still alive. As they retreated from Dunkirk in 1940, the German army was at their heels. Göring, the commander of the Luftwaffe, bragged to Hitler that his planes could kill them all without risking German soldiers. As his planes roared overhead, it became clear it was impossible to pick out soldiers running on a beach. 250,000 British got away. Göring's mistake had prevented an easy victory for Germany and the possible ending of the war. The world watched and puzzled at this man. Was he a blundering fool, a defeated warrior, or a psychopathic monster?
Hermann Göring was not a lunatic.
There were times about Göring when I enjoyed being in his company.
He was not psychotic.
Whenever I came into his room, he would jump up and say, "Come here, sit beside me on the cot." He was just, "I'm so glad to see you again."
He definitely was not insane.
You respected his courage, you respected his intelligence, you respected his sense of humor. So in a normal way of life, you would say, this would be a nice guy to have for a friend. But then you had to study his accomplishments and the way he rose to the top. And in that respect, then you see a almost dual personality.
He may be difficult to understand in 1945, but now it's emerging that he is quite a complicated man.
Göring was a fighter ace in the First World War, a national hero who professed an ambition to make Germany great again and believed that he was the main man with the qualities to do so.
They gave him an intelligence test, and they found out that he was brighter than 99% of the population. On the psychological tests, which were the ink blot tests, that's a test of personality. A psychologist asked the examinees, what might this be? And in Hermann Göring, a number of characters, flaws come together that really predict that he would be a very ineffectual leader. There's one famous response by Hermann Göring to card 3, where he talks about these are two people arguing.
An open figure of one man, opened up with two identical halves, and the insides in the middle. Maybe, they're debating heatedly over something. Maybe two doctors arguing over the inner organs of the man.
This was interpreted as Hermann Göring being Hermann Göring in terms of being arbitrary and aggressive. And then there's red blots on the top, and he looks at them.
Red spots, I can't figure that out. I can't figure that out. I don't know what those things are. Damned if I know.
And he flicks them away with both his hands, as if they don't exist. And you don't have to be a psychologist to make the leap about how you may have felt about people, races, that he felt were inferior. I don't know what these are. Let's just get rid of them. So I think that's his biggest flaw, is that he had this narcissistic personality trait that really interfered with everything he did. He had a dream that ultimately he would be the supreme commander of a Germany. So many of the decisions he made were influenced by his desperate need for personal gain, not because of strategic decisions about Germany at war. We think that his self-esteem was actually very, very low, that he probably wrestled with depression, and that this was a way for him to overcompensate and make him feel good about himself. You know, sometimes we go into a store and we buy something, we feel a little bit better. You know, we pull out our credit card and we say, oh, somehow I feel better, I acquired something, a ring, a book, something. He would acquire countries. He was the mastermind behind annexing Austria. You know, and that was sort of a coup for him.
Following the conquest of Austria, Göring was off in the race to become master of the universe, and the German people loved him. He took every high-ranking job in the Nazi Party, as well as becoming a 6-star general. He was assuming the role of demigod, and he loved it.
His personality characteristics cuts both ways. One, the sense of entitlement, narcissism, overinflated view of himself helped him in his career. I mean, the titles that he collected, you couldn't count them on two hands. But ultimately, it was his downfall because he was only interested in himself and didn't understand that ultimately, to win a war, you got to put a whole team together, not only Hermann Göring against the rest of the world.
Now this is the main point to understand Göring's personality and his incompetence. He liked good living, good life, wearing good-looking uniforms, collecting pieces of art. So, in order not to lose his high positions, decisions were dictated by his desire to have a good life, to stay on top of society.
Göring loved the power more than he accepted the responsibility. His hungry ego and fragile heart had to be satisfied. He spent more time plundering art and thieving personal wealth than he did in the War Office. He was bound by a dangerous logic. I need power. I get power through Hitler, who I adore. I must not lose his favor, or I will lose power. So he started to lie.
He always confirmed Hitler in his eccentric plans and wishes. This was his mistake as a military leader.
I know one time of one incident when Göring took a model of a jet plane to Hitler. And Hitler asked him, how many of these did he have? Well, he said he could produce 500 of these jet planes. Well, Hitler then developed a strategy based on these 500 jets, which were not at all available at all. And so Göring bragged. He could exaggerate, he could lie with a perfectly straight face.
He told Hitler his air force could wipe out the British in 5 weeks. He said he had destroyed the British defensive radar system. He said he had more planes than the Americans. All were lies. But for Göring, all that mattered was his relationship with Hitler.
When Göring was born, the whole family, including the older brothers and sisters, went to Haiti for 3 years.
There was no mother in the household, and maybe he never developed a real trust with a human being and never felt close to anybody really in the rest of his life.
I think Hitler became his role model, what his mother didn't do, because he was so weak in front of Hitler.
So Göring made his biggest mistake. The Germans had advanced into Russia and were surrounded in Stalingrad. Hitler turned to Göring for advice without realizing the significance of listening to this fawning yes-man.
The proposed Stalingrad airlift was the turning point of the war. The Sixth Army was surrounded, and one method of assisting 250,000 German troops in November, the winter is coming, was to provide air supply and airlift. A strategy was developed whether the German Luftwaffe would be able to carry out a mission like that. They calculated that to supply 250,000 men, it would require 700 tons to be dropped daily. That's unheard of. Göring said, I think we can do it. It appears feasible.
He should have told Hitler that we do not have enough planes, but he didn't do this.
And as we all know now, this turned into an incredible disaster. 6,000 Germans, only 6,000 Germans returned home.
The defeat at Stalingrad catapulted Germany into losing the war. This may have been as a direct result of Göring's ego. But on trial, he still puffed himself up to be the leader of the new Germany, ignoring that the Nazi Party was now defunct. At last he had obtained his dream, and he failed to see how hollow this was.
For him to not understand what's going on, or at least to act like it, it is mind-boggling, but it shows you how robust this man was in face of economic distress, torture, concentration camps, the final solution, German troops, thousands of troops dying. Didn't affect him. Remember Inkblot number 3? Just washes it away.
He admitted that maybe some things he had done were wrong, but they were necessary. In order to build the Third Reich, some things had to be done, like the persecution of the Jews. More or less, if I had to do it again in order to accomplish my goals, I would do it. He claimed he did it for Germany. I claim he did it for Hermann Göring. No apologies. If he had any regrets at all, it was that he would be hanged as a common criminal. That bothered him terribly.
Let me stress once more that I feel not the slightest moral or other obligation to submit to a death sentence by my enemies and those of Germany. I proceed to the hereafter with joy and regard death as a release. I shall hope for my God's mercy. The entire effort to stop us doing harm to ourselves was never motivated by concern for our welfare, but purely to make sure that all would be ready for the big sensation. But count me out.
In his cell, Göring committed suicide with a cyanide pill. He had cheated the hangman in a final flourish of narcissism. He had looked in the mirror and seen not a war criminal, but a fallen hero. And he had decided his death must be worthy of his life.
He was trying to lay the foundation for him being, thought of as a great German. He thought if I position myself correctly, every German will have a Hermann Göring statue in their household.